The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. And that true mind of the Tathagata is our own mind as well. Not even as well. There's no separation. Today is the 6th day of this 7-day sesshin here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico. And we will continue on this beautiful sunny spring day to share the teachings of Huang Po, known also as Obaku in Japanese, from this new translation by Robert Buswell called A Bird in Flight Leaves No Trace. The Zen teachings of Huang Po with a modern commentary, and that modern commentary is by a Son master, that is a Korean Zen master, Subo Sunim. The Sunim is a title. We're now on the 6th day, mostly through the 6th day. There's just a little bit more than a day left in the sesshin. Our energies have become more focused. Our practice has definitely gone deeper. But we can take it further, and that's vital. If we are truly to become awake, which is what Buddha means, then we can't stop and enjoy the scene. We have to keep going, keep going, keep going. Follow that yearning deep within. Or as a Korean master said long ago, turn the eyes inward, trace down the radiance toward its source. It's our very source that we are seeking. And that very source is not somewhere other than right here now. It cannot be anywhere but right here now. And those who have opened to it, awakened to it, have found joy and a tremendous subtle level of freedom that allows them to move through life without hindrance, not in a way of license, but in a way of being so in accord with what is going on that what happens is they simply respond to situations. There is no reactivity. Can you imagine not finding yourself furious at something, or frustrated at something, or upset with something, and trying to get away from that mind state? To be free from being caught in any of those is really the only freedom there is. And it's inborn, and we can realize it. And it sounds quite puny talking about it in this way. The reality of it is phenomenal. The practice brings us there. The extended out-breath is an exquisite practice. As someone long ago said, you've heard that quote before, as practice is truly bodhisattvic. First, it shows us where we're caught, and then it sets us free. And as you've heard before as well, we have to see where we're caught in order to become free. Human beings go through life in a conditioned manner, and the parts of their behavior that they don't like or don't feel like that's how they should be is suppressed and often projected out on other people. And if we find ourselves angry at somebody or upset at somebody, we need to take a look at what's going on within ourselves. Because most likely the behavior we're condemning in someone else is one that we have engaged in unconsciously multiple times. Our Zazen allows us to begin to see this and to change and to let it go. so that we are living more and more in accord with our true nature, not as an applied persona on top of it. Not that anything can be on top of it. There's nothing outside of this true nature, including delusion. So, taking up Huang Po, this is in a chapter called The True Dharma of the One Vehicle. Over the centuries, there have been arguments about the one vehicle, the great vehicle, so-called the Mahayana, versus the Theravadan or the Hinayana, which is a pejorative term, the lesser vehicle. Refers to what may actually end up being an arbitrary differentiation, because those in the practice of the Theravadan, the way of the elders, which is also called the Hinayana or the lesser vehicle, don't necessarily just practice for themselves, which is the hallmark of the Hinayana. The Mahayana being a practice that involves all beings. This is the Bodhisattva ideal, that we come to awakening for the benefit of all beings. It's not for our own personal self-satisfaction, as Mitra-roshi often says, but there is an aspect to the Mahayana that is expressed in the Bodhisattva vows, to come to awakening for the benefit of all beings, and to awaken in order to be of service, to relieve suffering. This is what is meant by the Mahayana, but that to say that the Hinayana is any less inclined in that direction is not necessarily the truth. Although there are terms in the Theravadan tradition that express not wanting to, or not being deep enough in one's practice that one doesn't have to return to another life. The implication being, okay, I've got it, I'm leaving now, goodbye, rather than the Bodhisattva ideal of not leaving until every being has been freed. The Dalai Lama has a vow that he repeats multiple times a day. It goes something like this: may I return over and over again until all suffering is relieved in the world, till all suffering beings are no longer suffering. It's an important aspect of our practice, that we don't practice just for ourselves, that we practice, of course, many people begin practice wanting to become free of pain and suffering. Well, then we have a sense of what other people are going through, and we don't want other people to have to suffer in the same way. And so we work to free ourselves from suffering, which both the energy of that expands out, and others are able to experience that peace, that joy, that let-go-ness, and be inspired by it. At the same time, we are freeing ourselves from our deluded habit patterns. And that also frees all beings. It's a deep understanding to really comprehend this. But since there are no barriers between self and other, when we ourselves are truly free, then all beings are free. And as we deepen our practice, we don't want anyone else to suffer. We don't want anyone else to suffer. Recently, we had the Regaining Balance retreats, this one an advanced retreat. And one of the women that came had experienced trauma over and over and over again from the time she was 9 years old onward. And various different members of her family. And denial by the very people that should have been there to keep her safe. When she grew up and got married and had children of her own, she was determined to make sure that they didn't experience the same kind of trauma, or any kind of trauma for that matter, as she did. And she took extraordinary measures in some cases to keep them safe. When people experience trauma, most people, if they have children of their own, do everything possible to make sure those children feel loved, treasured, and treated fairly, honestly, clearly, and without causing any kind of suffering. So, here we are with the words of Huang Po under the chapter, The True Dharma of the One Vehicle. Most ordinary people allow the perceptual environment to obstruct their minds, and ephemeral phenomena to obstruct the unchanging principle. They always seek to flee phenomena in order to pacify their minds, and to reject phenomena in order to preserve the principle. Most ordinary people allow the perceptual environment to obstruct their minds. We get caught in emotional reactivity from what goes on around us. It is this emotional reactivity that is a major source of our suffering. And yet, phenomena is ever-changing, and it's not who we are. And we can reach a place of such freedom that we're not impacted negatively by it. And a major example of that was Jacques Lasserre, who was imprisoned in Buchenwald, one of the notorious concentration camps of the Nazis, narrowly escaping death, immediate death, as soon as he was brought into the camp, since he was blind, by claiming he was a translator of foreign languages, even though at the time he really didn't have the knowledge that he later acquired. And Buchenwald was a place that people died from all manner of means. Some were strangled by their fellow prisoners who went berserk. Others were felled by falling rocks in the quarry where they were forced to work, in the ice and snow. Others were taken out and shot publicly. Others were sent to what were euphemistically called the showers, which were really gas chambers. It was a place where they were given too little to survive in terms of food or clothing. It was a product of massive hatred on the part of Hitler. And it was extremely painful, difficult, terrifying to live in that place. And at a certain point, he became so ill that he was dying, and they carried him away to die, fellow prisoners. But he didn't die. Instead, he came to a profound awakening and survived, and saw the whole experience very differently. He found joy, and he wasn't crazy. He was liberated. found joy, and he was of such a peaceful mind state from then on that nobody stole his bread after that. And instead, they led him to people who were freaking out because he could calm them down simply through his presence. He was not caught in phenomena. Most ordinary people allow the perceptual environment to obstruct their minds, and ephemeral phenomena to obstruct the unchanging principle. They always seek to flee phenomena in order to pacify their minds, and to reject phenomena in order to preserve the principle. We try to change our environment when we're in pain because somebody said something or did something or didn't do something or didn't say something, or for some reason things didn't work out the way we wanted them to. We try to change the environment to make it fit what we want. And this does not deny the fact that, for example, when we have a political situation, as we do now, where there's a great deal of harm being done to the environment, and that we wouldn't do something about it, that we would simply stand by and say, oh yeah, it's just phenomena, it's not real. No. When the world is in chaos, when people are suffering, we move to do what we can to relieve that suffering. But to be caught ourselves is not to relieve that suffering. To be caught ourselves and to try to change our own situation, make somebody different so that they will act differently to us. This is so classic. It's a classic known phenomena that people fall in love and get married, and then they try to make the other person conform to their ideal of who they ought to be. They start getting upset when the other person squeezes the toothpaste tube the way they don't think it should be squeezed, and silly little things like that, getting caught in ephemeral phenomena. Years and years ago, when I first moved to Santa Fe from Rochester, and another Rochester Zen Center member, Pat Simons, moved. He and his wife also moved, and they were very big into wanting to work for world peace. And they joined a number of groups in Santa Fe that were ostensibly for taking action to help peace come forth. And Pat just shook his head and said, they're spending so much time arguing with each other about the proper way to do this that it's anything but peaceful. We get so caught in phenomena, assuming it's real, and it isn't. It's very hard to really explain this in a way that people can understand. But it is our own misperception of what goes on that causes us suffering. And we seek to change it without being clear-minded about it, truly clear-minded about it. Clear-minded meaning let go so that we can see clearly. We don't have an investment in a result that colors our perceptions and makes us demand our own way. To be that clear, to allow, is to relieve suffering and not to create it. And we as human beings have the capacity to do that. This is what we are all seeking, really. That innate freedom to move seamlessly, joyfully through life without getting caught. Years ago, I had this image that seems most apt still, that our conditioning mythologically upholsters us in Velcro. And we either have the fuzzy, soft Velcro, or we have the kind that has hooks in it, which is the other side of the attachment. And as we go through life, we come into situations and people who have that other side, whichever side we don't have, and so we get caught in it. We get stuck in reactivity. But as we do our practice, each time extending the out-breath is a small but significant letting go of tenacity of our views. And as we do that, little by little, some of that Velcro upholstery falls off. So that as we continue to move through life, it doesn't matter if we come up against somebody who has the opposite kind of Velcro, because if we don't have the Velcro in place in parts of our body, there's nothing to get it clung to. Pain and suffering happen when we cling. And we often feel that we are helpless in this clinging. It can feel that way, but if we do our practice and take ourselves deeply enough, we see here and there where something we were clinging to is so artificial it's not worth clinging to anymore. The desire to cling to that is seen through, and we become a little bit more free. And in that increased freedom, we are able to see more clearly and to create less suffering. This is our practice. And if we truly want to become free, as we can be, truly free, truly awake, with no Velcro left to get clung to, we have to go all the way. The Mountain Gate is about going all the way. Very few people really want to do that. We want to have a little freedom and also have our desires. It doesn't mean that a person isn't desireless, but we're not hung up on our desires. And when we encounter difficult situations, it's easy to see through them and clearly see the path that will keep that from becoming suffering. But that's a deep level of practice. And we don't get there in one bound. It is a process, an essential process if we truly want to become free. Most ordinary people allow the perceptual environment to obstruct their minds and ephemeral phenomena to obstruct the unchanging principle. They always seek to flee phenomena in order to pacify their minds, and to reject phenomena in order to preserve the principle. That is the human condition. But it's not permanent. It's not fixed. And we have a way out of it if we choose to take it. It is not something that is easy to do because, as you've heard so many times before, in order to free ourselves, we have to see where we're caught. And seeing where we're caught is not a comfortable experience until we begin to realize that when we do see, each time we see some more subtle place we're caught, we're able to become free from it. We're not acting blindly out of it. Recently, I mentioned to someone that one of my sisters, I have two sisters, one of them was born bodhisattvic, truly. She is one of the most harmonious people I've ever known, and very giving human being, and seemed to move seamlessly through the life that we all had in this rather challenging family I grew up in. I don't know how it was as she grew older, because by the time she was 5, I was gone from the home because I was considerably older. My younger sister, who was the last of us, was a difficult one. And I recently had the startling and sobering insight that the reason why I found her difficult was because she expressed some of the same behavior that I did, and unconsciously didn't realize I was acting out. But when we can see these things, as painful as they are, then it's amazing how easy it is not to indulge in them anymore. We may, out of habitual tendencies, start to go in a direction of reactivity that would express that again. But it's almost as if there's some inborn stop sign, blinking lights that say, whoa there, you really want to be like that again? And it's easy not to go forward with it. Letting go is essential in practice if we're to see who we really are. And in order to let go, we have to know where we're caught. Although it doesn't feel very good, sometimes it's really not comfortable at all. Other times, there's an insight where we realize that we've misperceived a situation, and there's such a relief in that it's palpable. There was another experience I had long ago in Rochester when I was living and training at the Rochester Zen Center. And one Sunday evening, I needed to go get something or other. I don't even remember what it was, at a grocery store. So there I was in the Star Market Sunday evening, and I get into the checkout line, and it's my turn to be checked out, and the checker is obviously in a mood, a negative mood, and ordinarily and throughout my life until that point, because of my conditioning, I had assumed that when people were like that around me, it was because I was wrong, I was bad, I was not worthy. And it suddenly occurred to me, for some strange, unknown reason, probably as a result of my years of Zazen by that time, that it wasn't about me at all. She was just having a bad hair day. And it was such an enormous relief that I actually felt joy. And from then on, that assumption was gone. I no longer saw myself as the one that was being unfairly treated or unworthy. Each time we open to something like that, we become a little more free. Our sight is clearer. We can walk taller. And if we go far enough, deep enough, everything is let go of. And we truly, truly are free. But it's a long haul, and we have to be willing to walk it all the way. That is the Bodhisattva path. To come to awakening, no matter what it takes. And to do this so that others won't suffer. So that we can be clear enough to discern what to do in any given circumstance to help relieve suffering. Not in a codependent way, but in a way that suffering truly is relieved. And the way? Most ordinary people allow the perceptual environment to obstruct their minds, and ephemeral phenomena to obstruct the unchanging principle. They always seek to flee phenomena in order to pacify their minds, and to reject phenomena in order to preserve the principle. I leave you with that on this 6th day of Sesshin, where so much work has already been done, in hopes that it will inspire you to continue ever deeper. Each day in Sesshin, each hour in Sesshin, each moment in Sesshin, that we apply ourselves. And there are times when it's really hard to apply ourselves in Sesshin or any other time. But if we keep trying, keep working at it, keep extending that out breath, allowing ourselves to be fully aware of the visceral experience of that, including the visceral experience of any obstruction that seems to come up. Willy-nilly, we are letting go. It may not seem like it, but it's happening. And the power is growing to go much deeper, much quicker, because of the work that's been done in these 6 days. Take advantage of that and dive. You have nothing but freedom to result if you dive deeply enough. And to say freedom really doesn't express it. To be free from clinging is beyond comprehension. And it's how we naturally are. It's our true nature to be free from clinging. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.